Planet of the Apes is one of those franchises that's never really been on my radar. I mean, I'd seen the numerous pop cultural references, but the only other Apes movie I've seen in its entirety has been the 2001 remake by Tim Burton. And that was as a kid. That was 2001. I was in second grade at the time, so I didn't really have the attention span needed to really appreciate the 1968 film starring Charlton Heston. And I didn't even know that it was all based on a book until I was doing research for writing this review. So, coming out of this film, however, I'm gonna have to find some time to go back and watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because really, this is kind of one of those few films that's made me actually feel confident that a studio seems to know what it's doing. I mean, a lot of people think, oh yeah, Planet of the Apes is just people wearing ape costumes and just like typical adventure film, but with this darker, more serious, more cerebral approach we've been getting, well, I can see why they're calling this one of the smarter blockbusters to come out. So, yeah, all that said, let's start this episode of Romney's Reviews. As someone who hasn't seen the previous film in the franchise, I can tell you with full confidence that you won't really get lost. Yeah, there are some references and allusions to the previous film. There's also a little bit of a recap at the beginning, but for the most part, the film is able to stand on its own really well. Now, on the surface, the film may appear to just be humans and apes fighting each other for 2 hours, but there's a surprising amount of depth in this film. Personally, I kind of notice equal shades of Jurassic Park and Animal Farm while watching this film, especially Animal Farm. For those of you who don't know, that's a novel about pigs overthrowing humans and kind of becoming the ones in control, and by the end of the novel they're almost exactly like humans, and that's kind of what we see in this film, because we see Caesar kind of come back. He's the leader of these apes, but in addition to watching the humans attempting to broker peace with the apes, we also see, well, a story of infighting and power struggles as we see another one of the apes kind of trying to dethrone Caesar. And really, it was just fascinating to watch. As for the visual effects, they're top-notch. And once again, Andy Serkis and the full ensemble cast of motion capture actors once again demonstrate why there needs to be an Oscar for that category, because the biggest thing that I can really say is that all the motion capture actors managed to convey a lot of personality in the various characters that they were performing as. I mean, it was very easy to get invested, to actually care about these characters, because they weren't just people saying, oh, I'm playing a monkey. And it was just definitely a case of you could identify who these characters were. You could actually care about them. You saw the way they interacted. It was just also really interesting and really cool to watch, because really, it's also one of the few times where I've actually seen a film find a way to actually make a conversation in sign language actually work cinematically. Yeah, you still see subtitles throughout the film because not everybody knows sign language, but really it's just kind of the microcosm that we get with all the different ape characters is also just really fascinating and just really made it easy to get drawn into the film. As for the human side of the film, that's definitely a weaker part of the story. I mean, yeah, the human characters play a pivotal role, but I'm hesitant to really refer to any of them as the protagonist, because when it comes to who I would consider the protagonist of this film, well, that pretty much falls on Caesar. Caesar's pretty much the character that we focus on for pretty much the entire movie. The human characters, on the other hand, they kind of feel more like equal parts supporting cast and, in some cases, just a straight-up MacGuffin. As for the few remaining technical aspects of the film, the only real complaint I have pertains to the 3D. Now, the way the 3D is used in the film is actually really good, because they managed to balance both the, oh, things are kind of flying at the viewer thing. They kind of combine that with the idea of using 3D to kind of create a sense of atmosphere, of making this world kind of really big, bombastic, and believable, kind of taking a few pages from Avatar. But the only problem I really have with the 3D is that despite the numerous advances we have made with the use of 3D images, we still kind of run into the issue of the images being slightly darker and moderately desaturated at the same time. Again, not a complete movie killer, but it was something that I noticed while I was watching. Overall, this is one of the smarter films to come out this summer and is well worth the time of any fan of science fiction. I mean, it's one of the few contemporary films I've seen thus far that has as many layers as it does, which is particularly refreshing because Hollywood has kind of gotten to the point where they're afraid of having their big blockbusters alienate a viewer in the slightest. They're afraid of having their films actually make a viewer think. And so that's what this film did. It made me think. It makes you kind of think about humanity and just kind of the course of human history through the microcosm of what the apes are going through. So if you're a fan of Planet of the Apes, you're a fan of the franchise, or if you're at least a fan of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, then you'll no doubt enjoy this film. And even as someone who wasn't even familiar with the franchise, I still really enjoyed this film. This film was really, really interesting, really, really engrossing, really drew me in. So I highly recommend it to even those of us who have not seen any other films in the Apes franchise. This film is definitely a good place to jump on if you want to jump on. All of that said, I give Dawn of the Planet of the Apes a 4 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. I don't really have anything set up next week. It's not really set in stone, so all I can really say at this point is that I'll see you all next time.